Some of our residents do not use the internet. They may have a computer in their home, but they don't use it, and they're really left out. And we saw, you know, that kind of real time a couple weeks ago, or a couple months ago, when we had a resident, John, speak about wanting to have things on TV and saying he felt that the communication wasn't good. And then we had another resident who stood up and said that he thought the communication was good because we had just launched a new website. So the people that aren't computer literate or don't use the computer on a regular basis, they're missing a lot of the advances. And if we could put some of this on the TV, I think it'd be well worth the time and the effort. Things have gotten very cost effective with regards to telepresence meetings and telecommunications, as the city manager and Teresa have spoken about before, where they have things that can pick up your voice and the cameras will then lock on to who's talking. And that technology's been around for, I'd say, about 4 or 5 years. You know, Polycom has it on their video presence, and as well as the Cisco and things like that. So I think it's getting cheaper and cheaper, and I think it would be a worthwhile thing to have the city continue to research and bring back, and we can make a final decision at that time. But I recommend to go on TV as opposed to just streaming it on the web. Thank you very much.
Sure. Jim?
Yeah, I review the fact that we have so few people attend our council meetings. I think that it would be good to try to find some easier way for them to, to hear what we're saying. The only problem I have is I'd like to see it on TV, but many people don't have cable. I don't have cable. I have DirecTV, and what we need to explore is whether they will carry this so that the people can see it if they don't have cable.
Good point. Very good point. Carrie, do you want to comment?
I think that, just my opinion is that we are moving forward with the CCAC and potentially the development of a new facility. I know that what we have has been working pretty good feedback-wise. Residents have said it's been working for them. We have some that say not. But I think, you know, in this transitional time between now and making a decision about a new town center, I guess the cost would be a concern on my part. Portability would be a concern. Technology changes. By the time we get anything done, it's probably going to be new technology anyway. So I just don't want to waste money, but I wouldn't be opposed to listening to what some of the costs are if we were to consider some, you know, additional changes. And Jim did mention, I don't think too many people have the ability to get the public channel, nor does it's very interesting to watch, but that's, it's not a cable upgrade, let's just say. So,
It's not like watching Code Drive.
No. Okay, so I'd like to open it up to the public.
And I'd like one more
Oh,
comment.
sure, yes.
I mean, I think to wait until we had the town center,
I mean, how do they see this?
that's way too long.
Mm.
I mean, what would be the earliest estimate of the town center being available? I would say
Where do they see it
3
on
years,
television?
absolute earliest.
I think so, yeah.
Maybe could be 5.
Could be. Good. So open it up for public. We have a volunteer over there.
Hi, John Ruggiero, Stockbridge Avenue.
Sure.
Many years ago, the council brought this up. They said it was going to cost too much. I just left my house 20 minutes, half hour ago. I saw channel 26, 29, the government access channels. There was something on the The last council meeting of 7,000 resident city had 3 citizens there. 2 of them were running for office, and myself. There were 9 or 10 staff there. I've been to many council meetings where the same thing exists. The staff outnumbers the citizens. And this is the good time of the year, the sun and so on. Come around in January, February, and see how it is. But I watched, there's even poor little East Palo Alto has their town council meetings and the meetings of their committees, financial and so on. Palo Alto, Menlo Park, and other cities. In fact, I watched Palo Alto recently where they had a very important item that even reflected on us. residents sleeping in vehicles in the town limits. I watched most of that activity, and they ran them out of Palo Alto. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see them over here, but that's another point. But when you, and I know many single old ladies, elderly women, we don't want to call them old to get angry, that don't come here, they don't want to come here. My neighbor works, he's in his 80s, goes to work, he comes home at 5, 6, he's not coming here. And then when you do have an important item, this room allows 65 people, including you, and we have 80 people standing out in the wind and rain. I've seen it happen. And this is the modern age. If we can't keep up with East Palo Alto, we're supposed to be the affluent community. I can't believe it.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to make a comment on this webcam videotaping? Okay, I'll bring it back. You know, I think that.
Greg has a comment.
Oh, you did on the video cam?
Yeah, I was
Okay,
just,
sure.
I'm just supportive of doing something in the interim because of the fewer participants of the public that attend. So I just got to believe it'd be helpful, but it's a cost-benefit decision, and 60,000 may be a little pricey for a temporary facility.
Okay.
But if you could get the price down to something that was reasonable, I would certainly want to support it.
Okay. So, you know, I think that we're moving forward on this, and, you know, 2 years ago, we didn't have any videotaping at all. And so we are making progress to provide access, even though it's just on a computer right now, to members of our public who do not want to come and sit through the entire long council meeting, because they never know once they get in these doors whether or not they're going to be let out anytime soon. So
I feel that way.
so they don't, they're a little shy about coming. But, you know, we're not alone in that. I mean, if you look at some of these other towns, I was looking at Los Altos Hills just this afternoon, and it was videotaped. There was, I think, one person in the audience. And so, but again, it is a good thing to videotape it. I have lots of questions about whether or not we do the live broadcast, whether or not it is saved in an archivable situation, so that if you aren't sitting from 7 to 10 on Wednesday night, the third Wednesday night, to watch it live, can you scroll back and watch it another time? So there's lots of questions about the technology. I think
You
that,
could stream it to the web as well at the same time.
okay.
Yeah,
So-
so it would be out there just as it is.
So, okay, just let me, you know, you almost had your chance earlier now.
I was waiting for him to say something.
No. He's your foil?
No.
So anyway, so I
We
think
didn't speak.
what
We
we should do is let staff research this, do their homework, and bring us back, you know, some more information on it. The informal quote for the above, you know, list of specs for 60,000, I mean, that's an informal quote. I mean, it could be reduced if we sacrifice functionality. I don't think we want to sacrifice functionality. I think we want, you know, if we're going to do this, we're going to, you know,
Well,
really
part of that is,
vet it
you know,
out.
you could have static cameras, you could have cameras that can be manipulated to zoom in, zoom out. You can have one camera,
Mhm.
which is a pretty boring meeting from far away, or you
Right.
could have one that articulates and you're able to see the
Yes.
speaker as well as the council and zoom in on who's exactly speaking,
Right.
and then the staff table as well. So there's all kinds of options.
And then would the city clerk be able to manipulate that, or do
Yes.
we have to also hire a videographer, you know?
All kinds of options. The plan now, though, is to have the clerk
Mhm.
be able to manipulate the camera as well as the filing, who's speaking.
Well, I think we're on the right path. I think that the direction that this council should give staff is to continue researching it and vetting it out and bring us back more information at some time. The portability, if we install it in here in anticipation of moving it into a new location, that would be key, right?
I'd just like to say that television will get many more watchers, in my opinion, than
A computer, than the computer web. I'm not sure. That's an opinion that I think could bear vetting, you know.
Absolutely.
You know, seeing that. So, I'll reopen the public comment because I see the public who didn't jump up earlier, so go ahead.
Yeah, just really quick, I think the streaming is actually the best way, to be honest. It's almost like a computerized DVR, where people can watch it at leisure when they want. And I think that's exactly when they're going to do it, is when it's their moment.
Good.
It's not gonna be, if they have a DVR, maybe they'll be able to do that at home on a TV set, but that's the immediate availability. And there's lots of different technologies that are out there. You can put up in the cloud and you don't have to store it. I mean, I'm not gonna name names, there are several on the top of my head, but we can give some advice on that as an interim fix.
Is that enough direction?
It is, and so what staff will do is we'll go back and we'll talk with the vendor. I think Teresa already met with, had a demonstration of something cheaper than the 60,000, but some more functional options for us that might work, and bring something back to the council at a future meeting.
Okay. Council, are you satisfied with that?
I'm satisfied.
100%.
Perfect.
And Jim, you gotta get off the dish TV.
Yeah, maybe we can,
That's a whole other stuff.
Pat wants to see.
we'll burn you a VHS and send it over.
One question, anyone who does have direct TV here, I know you mentioned that, Jim, do they carry the big channels?
I don't know if they carry public channel or not. I'm gonna check, actually.
Okay,
Yeah,
And just see.
some do, some don't.
Yeah.
okay. All right, moving on to the most interesting agenda item tonight is our Marsh Road Channel repair final report. And I think, Gordon, you're gonna take this?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I'll make some introductory remarks and then turn it over to Roy Schnabel, principal from Biggs Cardoza Associates, who will be presenting the final report. You may remember that in March 2013, we had a workshop here with the council in which BCA presented the background, how they analyzed the channel. They brought in a sub-consultant to look at the hydraulics on the channel, and they presented their repair options for the Marsh Road portion of the open part of the Atherton channel. I'm going to quote from the report because I think it bears repeating as to the focus of the report. They recommended, quote, monitoring all significant cracks and patching of all significant voids. However, even with regular, high-quality inspection, which I believe our staff does, and maintenance, it is our opinion, that's BCA, that it is a question of when, not if, future degradation and localized failures will occur. And that ends that quote. They presented 4 options at that time. They recommended one based on a variety of factors, which was a soil nailed wall because it has fewer joints and less impact during construction, as well as some lower maintenance costs. Staff recommended the council also consider as an alternate a cast-in-place wall, which had the same cost, but would have the possibility of carrying future additional flow if you added another pipe. Council then asked for more information on 2 alternatives. One was a large steel pipe, because and I think the study has shown that would be faster to construct, as well as a concrete covered channel, because there was some interest in doing things on top of the channel box that would not be possible unless there was some kind of cover or bridge over it. In addition, council also asked for more information on maintenance costs in the long term. And I would note that all of the options that are presented by BCA have lower, longer-term costs than what we're doing existing, because we know that failures continue to occur, patching has to occur, and it's more difficult to maintain the existing walls. As I mentioned, Mr. Schnabel is here to present the information on mainly focusing, he'll do a little review of the previous work, but he'll focus on the questions that council asked for both the large steel pipe, the covered box culvert, as well as the long-term maintenance costs. I think he's also able to comment, although it's outside the scope of this study, he can comment on the covering or bridge or whatever over the channel, although I would note that in the study they do comment on that and note that it would require additional environmental analysis to determine that. I have spoken to the town deputy planner, and she concurs there would be more analysis if a covering is to go over the channel, but it is certainly something that could be analyzed. So with that, I'll conclude my brief remarks and ask Mr. Schnabel if he'd be kind enough to make his presentation, and then we're both here to listen and answer questions.
Great.
Thank you, Gordon. How do I turn this on?
Yeah.
Oh, just take a cover off?
I did bring my glasses, so I appreciate you putting me so close to but I did bring them.
I'll go through the original presentation that we presented in March fairly quickly, because you've gotten some of this context and background. So agenda is basically look at the existing condition, what are the replacement options and costs, additional considerations, and then our recommended options. The history of this and existing channel is basically, it's an 1,800-foot long trapezoidal concrete lined channel that is bound by the culverts both at Fair Oaks and Middlefield Roads, and then transversely by Marsh Road and the existing residential community on the other side. In 2007, there was an emergency repair that was done on approximately 200, 300 feet of this channel because failures were occurring, localized failures were occurring through the channel. The methodology for which they repaired it was to utilize soil nails, which is one of the options that we also reviewed through this project. The construction for the remainder of the repairs for this channel, if you guys proceed, is anticipated to occur in the 2015-2016 fiscal year. So the replacement options, option one. The first option that we looked at was utilizing a combined shoring and permanent replacement option, which was basically a soldier pile wall, consists of putting in vertical steel piling and then basically shooting a concrete facing on that. Here's basically a cross-section of what that would look like at one of the deeper locations in the channel. Feel free to ask me any questions during the okay.
I just want, the red are the soldier piles, right?
Yeah,
That right there?
yeah, that's a soldier pile, and then what we do is we excavate, that stabilizes the roadway while we excavate that little portion there, that little triangle. And then we basically shoot or pour a facing onto the soldier pile.
A wedge, so you would keep the trapezoidal,
It would still be trapezoidal because we'd still, what we're likely to do on the residential side because of the trees and the impacts to that side, we would basically just repair the concrete facing on that side and put a surface on the channel side.
Okay.
So it would be a concrete wall on the Marsh Road side with an invert, replacing the existing concrete invert that's there.
And by the way, by we, I think Mr. Schnabel means we'd have to do a publicly bid process.
Yes.
BCA are the engineers, they wouldn't be the contractors.
Right.
Yeah, thank you for that.
I meant the city, or the town.
Thank you.
Okay.
So some of the pros is that the soldier piles act as a temporary shoring system, and it can be accommodated to design for a future roadway and covering of that section on the other side. Some of the cons is that it's slower. There's some tree trimming that's going to be required to place the soldier piles, and because of this type of construction, there's quite a bit of equipment staging on Marsh Road, which increases some of the traffic handling issues that we'll have to address on Marsh Road during the construction of this project. That cost came out at about $2.9 million. Option 2A.
If I remember right, the other, go back to your picture. The other issue was the fact that these joints here would need maintenance, right? We talked about that at this
Yes.
time. And then also you have up here that it says, hey, you can widen the road, but I don't, which I'm not sure, we've pretty much said we didn't want to do, but if in fact, I don't see how you could do that without jeopardizing here, because there's a certain volume of water that's going through here, which I know when we get to the pipes you're gonna talk about. But without changing this angle, I don't see how you could move this and widen the road, so could you explain that? Because I think we brought this up at that time too. I don't
Yeah.
see how you can do that.
So the solution that I would probably, it would be a modification of this to allow us to put a deck over the channel and basically close the channel
Or make it a culvert.
Oh.
and make it a
that would be
culvert.
the way.
And so,
Yeah.
but it wouldn't be a throwaway cost. Basically, the L portion of that system
Yeah.
would basically be designed to handle additional lag loading from a,
All right, so you couldn't, with the 2.9 that you're talking about here, that doesn't accommodate, it says that you could possibly spend more money in.
that's correct.
Right, okay.
That's correct.
so-
It doesn't address that now.
Right, okay.
The two- Whereas the two alternatives that
The other two actually potentially could.
yes. So option 2A, which is basically a cast-in-place concrete U-channel, would be basically to construct a concrete U-channel within the trapezoidal channel, and replace the existing channel with a concrete channel. Okay? Here's basically that. It's very similar in cross-section. This would require temporary shoring instead of the soldier piles, so it's a little less robust. They put in the temporary shoring, either sheet piling or soldier piling lagging, and they go in and form and cast the section. This is, some of the pros is that it has a little less impacts on the vegetation. It also can be designed to accommodate the future roadway. This is the majority of construction performed within channel limits, so you have the likelihood of getting a lot more contractors to bid on this project, which means potentially a better bid. Cons are it's slower than some of the other options, and temporary shoring would be required. The benefit is it's also one of the cheaper alternatives at 2.1 million. 2B is the same as 2A, except instead of a concrete cast-in-place section, we'd use precast sections. So they basically cast the L-shaped sections, ship them to the site, and then drop them in and pull them together. Okay. So basically it has a very similar, again, very similar look. That section would be 8 to 10 foot segments, and then they would basically push the 8 to 10 foot segments together and combine them. So it has a lot of the same similar issues as with the cast in place. There's a lot more tree trimming, because basically I have to lift these precast units and put them in place. So it has a significant impact on the trees that are there.
And if you could refresh us on putting the joints together, what would we do with that?
Basically, they push it's open joints, so they basically push the joints together,
Right.
and there'll be maintenance issues, as with any joint, there'll be maintenance issues within those joints.
Right.
So
Okay.
it creates some,
Do they screw the joints
Overtime.
together?
no,
Over time.
So that, the joints are what potentially could be probable in the future,
Right.
failure.
So in other words, the joints are just pushed together.
yes.
So-
You can stress them together, but that's difficult along a linear system.
So, I mean, weeds and plants and everything else can get off through those joints.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And there are methods to prevent that, but water flows through the joints, and when water flows through the joints, it creates issues.
And this would be, when you're moving these joints in place, it's a complete shutdown of Marsh Road. If I remember right, and that's one of the things that we were concerned about, because you would have to, even though you get them in place faster, you wouldn't even have one lane for people to, maybe go have one lane of traffic. It's just gonna be a complete shutdown, because those big joints, until you get them in place, are gonna have to be positioned and things like that, and it's gonna require heavy equipment to move them in.
Correct, there'll be cranes to pull that in, there'll be flatbed haulers to hold the precast units.
Right. And that's a canopy road, so that would be issues.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's significant issues to the trees.
Right, okay.
not even just along the channel, but over
Oh, up
you
the
know,
front part,
the
yeah.
canopy,
Yeah.
the overhang.
The third option would be to do a soil nail wall similar to what they did in the repair.
Mhm.
And so basically, they drill nails into the side of the slope and do a top-down constructions. They start with the nails at the top, shoot the surface to stabilize it, and then as they do that, they do the next lift, and then they come in and put in a permanent concrete structure that they shoot in front of it. So the pros for this is, like option number one, the temporary shoring system is integrated into the permanent structure. So it doesn't require temporary shoring. It has minimal impact to the vegetation and trees. It also can be designed to accommodate the future roadway. A majority of the construction, as was with the repair, can be performed from within the channel, so it reduces some of the traffic handling. Sorry.
Yeah, so on all these things, you seem to have added that it can support the future widening of the road, but then you've also started, you said in the beginning, of course, some of these don't require, if we're gonna ever do that, then we have the CEQA issue.
Right, and that's
Right,
beyond their
so
scope.
So really, these solutions, and then there's extra costs associated with it, so
Yes.
doing this does not preclude you from covering it, is what you should say.
Right.
But it doesn't support doing it, because you still have all the things you're gonna have to do if we do any of the other ones that we've asked you to look into.
Yeah.
Which was just, if you're gonna cover it, let's just cover it and get it out of the way.
Yes,
There's no environmentally superior alternative identified. There would be a study in the future that would probably end up in some kind of a mitigated negative declaration, quite frankly.
Right.
But it still would be a study that wouldn't be free.
Right, so, yeah, well, and that's what they said in the other ones, and said at the top. So these other items, which we're gonna get to in a minute, I hate to jump ahead. But they said if we cover it, we have to do the CEQA, because it's gonna have impacts. And then there'll be additional costs to cover it. So really, that number 3, I mean, yeah, okay. Any ditch could be covered, seriously. So I don't think that those are valid.
Well, what I'm trying to say here is that it could be covered without throwing away the cost of what was done for the repair. And we gotta remember,
That's valid.
this is a,
That's what I understood.
this was a repair job. It didn't have the scope of
Okay.
looking at what we were gonna do in the future. What we were asked by the staff was to make sure that whatever methodology would come, that we also understood whether it would preclude or exclude doing that in the future, because that was out there. So,
But not all, I apologize, not all covering will trigger CEQA, correct?
Actually, I think
All covered.
any project triggers CEQA. How much more
Yeah.
work would have to be done if the channel were completely covered would have to be
We're
determined by
still,
the planning staff.
this project is complying under CEQA regulations as a Cat X.
So wouldn't there be a difference if you covered it to carry the weight of a full road, like, solid asphalt, like is in the Menlo Park area, or if you just covered it like as a bike and pedestrian path, maybe in a separated boardwalk kind of a fashion that would allow it to still quote-unquote be an open channel for overflowing, and so that it's not solidly covered, hermetically sealed.
My guess is on the CEQA, and I apologize, I'm not an expert on it, but it's a change in the habitat. So you're changing a channel.
Yeah, but you're covering, because the animals live down there potentially.
But they could get it, well.
But they have to do the study.
It's just, anything you do, when he says CADEX, it's categorical exemption. Categorical exemption just says, this is a small project to repair something that exists. That does not mean that it couldn't trigger CEQA in other ways. It will depend on the project, it will depend on the scope, and it will depend on, if you do build it in a way that accommodates, and it's intentionally built to accommodate a future decking of some sort, that triggers CEQA beyond the categorical exemption. Because you have to look at the worst possible case when you're talking about CEQA, which is the worst possible case, CEQA.
Hard deck to.
Have we any idea, I mean, I know it's hard, but have we any idea the additional work to get, if it was covered, to get CEQA to approve it?
If it is a negative declaration, Lisa and I talked a little bit about this yesterday, it would probably be somewhere between $75,000 and $100,000 just to do the studies to show that there are potential mitigations. And if you have an EIR, at least double that, if not 4 times that.
Would we need an EIR?
It would depend on
We
the,
wouldn't know until they do an initial study, which they wouldn't do until there was a project selected and the scope of the project determines the environmental review that has to take place.
So would it be possible to have members of the public kind of chime in at this time? Sure, Calvin?
I just wanted a clarification. What is CEQA?
California
okay.
Environmental Qualities Act, so-called EIRs.
EIR was familiar with CEQA, I just wasn't.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Environmental quality.
EIRs are required to satisfy CEQA. So,
Well, and
And so we
there
have
are
another member
also,
of the public?
short of that, there's something called a negative declaration, which says the statement is being made that we can mitigate this project so that there are no potential significant environmental impacts, but then you have to have the mitigation program that shows how you're going to keep it from becoming, needing an EIR. This is short of an EIR, that's why it costs less money, but it's still not free.
yeah. And one of the other issues that was noted with regards to potentially covering the box all the way is that it changes the hydraulics of the channel, and it likely will improve the flooding in this area, but cause more flooding in another area because it changes the hydraulics, and that will, because you're impacting another area, will also require.
Why is that?
We have the same volume.
I mean, if we're taking the same amount of water, whether it's covered or not, why is it impacting other areas?
Because if in a flood event, it overtops. And if you're now covering it, it now doesn't overtop. And so you're not getting the relief of that volume. That volume is going under pressure through your culverts to another location.
Yeah, but we talked about that there would be, just like it is today over, let's say by Encinal School, they have the
Floodplains.
drain, and they also have the little top that's about 3-4 inches, and so the water does come out, and that was what we had talked about, even with the pipe, is that there would have to be some sort of overflow requirement.
Even covered, we could have an overflow situation.
Yeah.
It would have to be looked at.
Well, that would be part of the CEQA analysis.
It
And that could be the mitigations that keep you from needing to do it, because quite frankly, if you know and anticipate and engineer the solution in ahead of time, then you don't have to do an EIR, you can get by with it. Maybe.
Yeah, but I thought we had talked about,
We-
there would be an overflow area, and I specifically brought up the thing over at Encinal, because, that's there, and that's really why it's there. It's not there to drain the water, it's there as an overflow.
Yeah, it's a catch basin.
Yeah,
Right.
and so,
So we have another member of the public. Go ahead.
So Valerie Gardner, I'm concerned that sort of what has satisfied our needs with the channel in the past are not going to be sufficient in the future, because I believe with climate change and the way things are looking, that we could be seeing more water, more rain in this area and require additional drainage. I also want to state for the record that many communities are choosing to change their unsightly channels and try and recreate a more native habitat, sometimes not completely going back to the native state, but doing a combination of a man-made and then a native simulation that helps with habitat creation for creatures and allows for more natural absorption of the water. So sometimes they're not even using the completely impermeable materials, but they're using more permeable and allowing more drainage. And they're doing things that allow for native grasses in the area so that when there is overflow, it can soak into a little area and not spill out onto roadways. And I think we need to look at that capacity and the need to change what are hugely unsightly projects that we've built here, especially on the Watkins side of Holbrook Palmer Park. That's so ugly, and it's just an eyesore. And I don't understand why we would continue to think like that when there are better engineered solutions where, for the cost of saving the AIR and the impacts, we could actually do a really good environmental project that would be good for the species and for our water channeling purposes.
Okay, nice, good comment. You know, I think that for the Marsh Road channel, that might not be an option because of the restricted, confines of a roadway, but I don't know, maybe along the Watkins and into the park, there could be some, expansion of a more, riparian way, don't you think?
Yeah,
I mean, I think we could really
If this will
look at that along that, and that would relieve some of the pressure of the water going down that way.
I
think
wanna
that
point out
this, yes.
If we looked at the Marsh Road one and didn't just do a straight channel, but actually looked at where the trees were and looked at what some of the natural rises of the neighboring landscapes, we might be able to create a little bit of a more natural kind of curving channel, essentially a channel, but even if for bikers and pedestrians, if it were covered and it were not just straight, it would just aesthetically be better, and I think hydraulically it would be better, and there could be areas in there where there were, areas for swell and things that could be built in that would be better for our channeling purposes also. So I don't know if engineers are looking at that, but I do think that that is within the requirements of anticipating increased amount of rain in this region, because being a community right on the edge of the ocean, we are gonna probably see increased precipitation in the coming decades. And that little channel probably will not be sufficient.
I think that certainly for this project, for this 1,800 feet on Marsh Road, we have not instructed the consultants to look at that option. I think that that option, actually, in the back of my mind, has always been for along Watkins, and talked privately to other people, but not publicly to council. So I'm glad you brought that up, and I think that that's something that we really should look at in the future.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
But do you think that that idea, that concept could work in the 1,800?
Not on Marsh. I think that the issue on Marsh
There's
is,
too much water coming through there.
and the
Way
road
too
is there,
much
and that's the issue, is the road is being cut in, and we've got